We live in a world where it's easier to advertise than ever before. A mailing list 20 years ago would reach a tiny fraction of the people it can do now. Branding is everywhere, on clothes, around football pitches, on every piece of equipment. And because the internet allows logos to be pushed for money into every corner of public and private awareness, every little triple stripe, fruit shape, and swoosh you see is loaded with significance. These logos can be turned into badges of allegiance, their wearers into the members of clubs, always aiming at exclusivity. We claim to be free, and in so many ways, we're enslaved. We're endlessly wired in an era of profound disconnection. Music, like anything else that's sold, is marketed in much the same way as trainers. The product, as it's called, is overlaid with layers of super-added meaning. The look of the artist or band, their age, their hairstyles, their manners during interview, which guitars they use, which strings, which picks, and so on. A band name is a brand name. And knowing about the details of a band is the passport to club membership, at a time when only vinyl sales are on the increase, but in such small numbers that the LP's main commercial value is as an advertising device. Money's obtained by selling big venue concert tickets and merch. You buy this at grossly inflated prices to prove loyalty and membership. It feels like, but it isn't, love. Let's take as an example a band which I admire, study and enjoy more than any other current band, the Manic Street Preachers. It was announced that they were working on a new album in early 2020. In June 2020, I read that the band had written a song called Orwellian. I remember this because Orwell was the first serious writer I took to heart when I was a confused adolescent in London, miles away from the valley in South Wales where I'd grown up. Orwell seemed to be interested in people like me. The other writers on my A-level syllabus at the time all seemed posh and alien in some way. Later I'd see that they were mostly English and middle class, not Welsh and working class like I was. They knew as little about my life as I knew about theirs. Orwell, as it happens, was also English, had been to Eton, and described his class background as lower upper middle class. That's to say, upper middle class without any money. But he wrote about tramps and down and outs, about what people without money did to enrich their lives. He devoted a whole essay to making a good mug of tea, and he kept his prose free of affectation. He wanted it, he said, to be as clear as a window pane, something you looked through, not at. So of course I noticed when my favourite band announced that they'd written a song called Orwellian. Immediately that day, 1st of June 2020, I wrote a song of my own called Orwell, since I believed that Orwellian should mean homeliness, practicality, Cox's orange pippins, and compassion, as well as telescreens, social manipulation, and strategically pumped-up hate. The Manics' actual song, Orwellian, was released on 14th of May 2021, almost a year after I first heard of it. It was followed by another single, The Secret He Had Missed, on 16th of July 2021. Both singles were accompanied by beautifully constructed music videos and generated a great deal of press coverage, all of which of course noted that they were singles from an album, The Ultra Vivid Lament. Meanwhile on Instagram, there was a potential track list showing titles of most of the songs finally included on the album, which was released on the 3rd of September 2021. The promotional build-up to this album therefore took approximately 16 months, long enough for the album to be mentioned as forthcoming in Stephen Lee Nash's book on the Manics, which was published on 8th of February 2021. The Manics tour to promote the album was scheduled to run from the 30th of July to the 5th of October 2021. Two of the Manics, Nicky Wire and Sean Moore, have a visible presence on social media. Every detail of the band's activities, politics, musical preferences, clothes, etc. is the subject of constant scrutiny and retweeting. Even a video like this one of mine helps in a tiny way. If you look up any of these facts on the internet, you'll find that each of them produced a massive slew of commentary, speculation, appraisal, and now formal reviews of the album. Now, part of this is just what always happens when a real enthusiasm is shared. Suppose I come across a song or a band or a poet or a thinker I admire. I tell such of my friends as I think might be interested. But suppose it was financially in the interests of a record label to excite public curiosity about my interests and activities. They would, in addition to the ordinary sharing of information, be active in building up expectation, and they'd spend significant amounts of money to do this. Clearly the big labels have the most money, and they can mount the most extensive and expensive campaigns. They're forced onto our attention by what's called promotion, but the promotion is made effective by subtle forms of manipulation we can call hype. In order to get noticed, if getting noticed is what you want, you need hype. Dylan recognised this early, and recognises it now by calling the review section of his website simply hype, which is clever because it allows him to use the hype without seeming complicit with it. When the Manics started out, the person most responsible for generating hype was Richey Edwards. Being gifted in the visual arts as well as poetically, he designed collages for the covers of demos he sent out to many managers, record companies, promoters, booking agents, publicists, anyone with pull in what we tellingly call the record industry, as if it was a steelworks. He caught the interest of Philip Hall, who promoted the Manics from genuine belief in their talent. Eventually, however, I think Richey sickened of the whole charade. The lyrics for Doors Closing Slowly make this magnificently and poignantly apparent. Realise how lonely this is? Self-defeating, fuck yeah. Drowned in love and false kisses, a gathering of no meaning. That shadow's a cross, okay? Judgment must be willing today. Silence is not sacrifice. Crucifixion is the easy life. Who threw the first stone? If the stone is you, forgive them, forsaken, bleeding feet, an angel's saviour. That shadow is a cross, okay? Judgment must be willing today. Silence is not sacrifice. Crucifixion is the easy life. Embrace to betrayal, unarmed army salvation. Listen to the selfish ones. They are the voice of accomplishment. I wouldn't be surprised if the original draft of this didn't have the repetition of the verse beginning, that shadow is a cross. Richey knew he was writing potential lyrics, but often, I suspect, started with what felt to him like a poem, written in private about a private state of feeling, which he nonetheless wanted to share. The lyric begins by indicating that the loneliness referred to is of a non-obvious kind. Realise how lonely this is. The tone of the next line, self-defeating, fuck yeah, seems to me profoundly complex. Richey was familiar with the terms of popularised psychoanalysis, of course, and realised that they were often glibly used. How many times have you heard it said casually that someone is passive-aggressive, or schizophrenic, or a bit autistic? The speaker of this line recognises the term that might be applied to him, but I think resists its self-satisfied simplicity. Sometimes we defeat ourselves for good reason. We may, for example, be doing something which actually we don't want or don't any longer want, and so may unconsciously ensure that we don't succeed at it. The fuck yeah on this view might be paraphrased as, yes, that's exactly what I mean to be self-defeated. Possible reasons for the recoil referred to are given in drowned in love and false kisses, a gathering of no meaning. The fans at a rock stadium, when you aren't one of them, or even sometimes when you are, can look suspiciously like the rabid, uncritical crowds at a political rally. Looking out on either of those, when the trance of stardom is past, might be for some a clear indication that they are caught up in something which, however genuine it is at heart, is in the form it's come to take, sickeningly false. The product of hype, and of our need for heroes. What's being offered isn't love, but the ghost of love. Yet the lyric shows compassion for our deludedness. Forgive them, forsaken. Richey had several confrontations before he disappeared with music professionals on the promotional side of the business. Since he turned up to at least one of these, in cold weather, with his head shaved and wearing pyjamas, like a concentration camp prisoner. It was easy for those he confronted to defend themselves by saying he was mad. But where does the madness really lie? In the people who see there's something wrong with the music industry, or in the industry itself? It's notable that this lyric invokes Christianity repeatedly. A cross, judgment, sacrifice, crucifixion. The woman taken in adultery who was about to be killed by stoning when Christ intervened. The victim, I suggest, is the angel of the lyric, whom the one with bleeding feet, that's to say Christ, saved. This incident from the New Testament surfaces in Richey's mind, most probably because he's thinking about the loneliness and danger of testifying to a truth which is publicly unrecognised or resisted. Crucifixion is the easy life is obviously a puzzling and ambiguous line. There are two main ways of taking it, I think. First, crucifixion would be easy by comparison to this, my alienated state of loneliness. Or, the easy life, going along with a consensus, is a kind of crucifixion. It seems to me that the first reading would be self-glorifying and a bit stupid. The shock of it, however, opens the mind to the second reading, which I suspect is entirely what Richey is writing about. It seems reasonable to suppose that the doors closing slowly are on a lift Richey wants to step out of, but crucifixion is what a famous person could expect, who turns his back on his fans. The final stanza is, in the manner which I feel Richey learnt from Sylvia Plath and maybe John Berryman, highly compressed and elliptical. Embrace to betrayal, unarmed army salvation. Listen to the selfish ones. They are the voice of accomplishment. The embrace of Christ by Judas was the prelude to betrayal. Who's being betrayed and by whom is vague here. Possibly Richey thinks he himself is the betrayer, since he may already be imagining his departure from the band and stardom. Or maybe more simply, it's the embraces fans give, which then abandon the stars back into their sense of loneliness and estrangement. So the embrace by fans is a form of betrayal. The next line clearly plays with the phrase Salvation Army, but here it's an unarmed army which is offering salvation. I think it's most likely that these, the selfish ones, are those who are complicit with the consensus Richey wishes to break free of. It's possible they are the fans, the industry potentates, and even just possibly, in some moods, the other Manics. At the outset, Richey was the one most interested in publicity stunts, being a star interviewee and so on. But gradually, his recorded interviews show an increasing disenchantment and wish to dissociate himself from the whole racket. How many other rock stars have said that being a poet like Philip Larkin is more important than being in a band? Writers like Jonathan Hari and Gabor Mate have written recently about how contemporary culture is a machine which feeds our dissatisfactions. Culture sucks down words. One cause of those dissatisfactions is not being famous, since the famous are presented to us as fortunate and fulfilled, as we'd all like to be. Those who achieve fame thus inadvertently help the machine to perpetuate itself. They stir up admiration, affection, devotion, but also envy. The only ways out of this are either achieving comparable forms of success for yourself or opting out of the paradigm, as Joni Mitchell began to do as early as her song Free Man in Paris on Court and Spark. The chorus imagines a promoter saying, "I was a free man in Paris. I felt unfettered and alive. There was nobody calling me up for favours and no one's future to decide. You know I'd go back there tomorrow, but for the work I've taken on," stoking the star-maker machinery behind the popular song. Hearing this, and hearing the poignantly beautiful, sadly angry lament James Dean Bradfield made out of Richey's lyrics for Doors Closing Slowly, I think of medieval stonemasons who decorated parish churches often, so painstakingly, with work they never signed. I'll give a link below to my own cover of Doors Closing Slowly.